the letter that never arrived. The rain fell softly over Los Angeles, streaking against the glass walls of Keanu Reeves's quiet apartment. Inside, he sat at a long wooden desk, staring at an envelope that had aged like a memory. Yellowed edges, a faint scent of old perfume, and the handwriting he could never forget. Sandra Bullock. It had arrived that morning, slipped beneath his door by mistake, or maybe by destiny, postmarked 20 years ago. For a long moment, Keanu didn't move. He just sat there, the city humming faintly outside, as if waiting for his decision. He ran his fingers over the envelope's surface, feeling the weight of something unfinished. The letter was dated June 5th, 2005. It was written a few months after the film that had changed both their lives, The Lake House. They had played lovers trapped in time, separated by years but connected through letters. What he didn't know back then was that life was about to imitate art. He tore the envelope open carefully. The words inside trembled, written in blue ink. Dear Keanu, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if I should have written it. But if life gives you one last mission, make it about kindness. The world will remember your movies but not your silences. I wish I had said yes when you asked me to go to Tokyo that night. Maybe we both lost something beautiful because we were afraid to begin. With love, Sandra. Keanu read it twice, maybe 3 times before setting it down. His chest felt tight, as though the years between then and now had folded into one long exhale. He had loved her, quietly, completely, and without expectation. But he had let her go, thinking she needed a different kind of peace. He stood up and walked to the window. The city stretched endlessly, wet and shimmering, full of people chasing the next thing. He wasn't like them. He never had been. For years, he had lived with the belief that solitude was strength. But that letter changed something. It was like a forgotten echo that refused to fade. And then came the call. His phone buzzed with a name he hadn't seen in years. Marcus, his old stunt coordinator and closest friend during their early days. Keanu answered quietly. You need to see this, Marcus said, his voice serious. There's a project. A message, actually. It's about her. Keanu froze. Who? Sandra. Silence stretched between them like a held breath. What do you mean? She left something behind, Marcus said, and someone doesn't want it found. That sentence shifted the ground beneath him. A mystery he hadn't asked for. But something deep inside him stirred. The letter. The timing. The storm outside. Fate had a strange sense of direction. Keanu took his old leather jacket from the chair, slipped on his boots, and stepped out into the rain. The streets glistened, the city lights reflecting off puddles like scattered memories. Each step felt heavier, yet purposeful, as though this was the path he had unknowingly waited to walk. Marcus was waiting at an old cafe near Sunset Boulevard. The place smelled like burnt coffee and rain-soaked wood. He looked older, beard gray, eyes tired. I thought you'd never come, Marcus said. I almost didn't, Keanu replied. Tell me what this is about. Marcus slid a small USB drive across the table. She recorded something a week before she disappeared from Hollywood, he said. It's never been released. Someone buried it. But it's not just a message, it's a mission. Keanu stared at the drive, his heartbeat steady but heavy. What kind of mission? The kind that could ruin people, Marcus said quietly. Or save them. Keanu pocketed the drive without another word. Later that night, back in his apartment, he plugged it into his laptop. The screen flickered. And then she appeared, Sandra, in a dimly lit room, eyes soft yet filled with something he hadn't seen before. Truth. If you're watching this, she began. Then something went wrong. I was working on a story about a humanitarian foundation, one that was using celebrity donations for something darker. I had evidence. I was going to expose it. But I knew someone was watching me. So I left this for you, Keanu, because you were the only one I ever trusted to do what's right. His pulse quickened. I don't know where this will end. Her voice trembled. But I believe in kindness. And in you. Find the orphanage in northern India. The truth begins there. The video cut off. Keanu sat in silence, every emotion he had buried surfacing at once. Fear, regret, longing, determination. The orphanage. Northern India. He leaned back in his chair, eyes glistening in the dim light. His reflection in the dark glass looked like someone ready for a war he didn't choose but couldn't avoid. For years, he had fought villains on screen. But this time, the battle was real, and the woman he had once loved might have died for it. He opened the letter again. "One last mission," she had written. He whispered softly to the empty room. "Then one last mission it is." And as the city slept, Keanu booked a flight to Delhi under a different name. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon like an omen. This was no longer about love or loss. It was about truth, and the promise he never got to keep. And somewhere, half a world away, a woman in a faded shawl waited beside a locked orphanage gate. Holding a photograph of Keanu and Sandra smiling years ago, she had been waiting for him all along. The orphanage in the fog. The plane touched down in Delhi just before sunrise. The sky was a quiet gray, still heavy with monsoon clouds. Keanu Reeves stepped out of the terminal wearing a plain shirt, a weathered backpack, and a pair of sunglasses that did little to hide the exhaustion in his eyes. He wasn't here as an actor. He was here as a man chasing a ghost and a promise. Outside, the air smelled of rain, chai, and dust. Rickshaws honked, vendors shouted, and the city moved like it had never slept. Keanu had been to India before for films, but this time felt different. He wasn't being followed by cameras, but by memories. The address Sandra had mentioned in her video was in Uttarakhand, a small orphanage near the foothills of the Himalayas. He rented an old Jeep and began the long drive north, the rain tapping softly against the windshield as the landscape changed from crowded highways to winding mountain roads lined with pine and mist. Hours later, he reached a small village perched between two ridges. The orphanage was there, a stone building covered in moss with rusted gates and silence hanging in the air. It looked abandoned. He parked the Jeep, stepped out, and pushed open the gate. The hinges creaked. Inside, wild grass had grown tall, windows were cracked, and children's drawings still clung to the walls, faded by time. Then he heard it, a faint rustle from one of the rooms. He followed the sound, careful and quiet. When he opened the door, a woman in her 60s looked up from a wooden desk, startled. She wore a faded shawl and had sharp, kind eyes. "You're late," she said simply. Keanu froze. "You were expecting me?" "She told me you'd come," the woman replied, her accent soft but sure. "Years ago," he stepped closer. "You knew Sandra?" The woman nodded. "She stayed here for a week. She said she was working on a film, but I knew it was more than that." Keanu sat down across from her. "What was she doing here?" The woman looked out the window before speaking. She came to find the truth. The foundation she was investigating used this orphanage as a front. They said they were helping children, but they were selling medical data from them to companies overseas. She found documents, and then she disappeared. Keanu's jaw tightened. "Do you still have those documents?" The woman reached under the desk and pulled out a small metal box wrapped in cloth. "They tried to take it, but she asked me to keep it safe," she said. "When he comes, give him this." I didn't understand what she meant. Until now. Keanu opened the box carefully. Inside were papers, photographs, and a single flash drive. One photo stopped him. Sandra standing in the orphanage courtyard, surrounded by children, smiling. Behind her, a man in a dark suit stood half hidden. The woman pointed at him. "That man came here 2 days before she vanished. Who is he?" Keanu asked. "They called him Mr. Valen, American. He said he worked for the donors." Keanu pocketed the photo. "Where can I find him?" The woman hesitated. "You can't. People who tried to follow him didn't come back." Outside, the wind began to rise, whistling through broken glass. Keanu stood by the window, his reflection caught between storm clouds and memories. "I have to try," he said quietly. The woman placed a hand on his arm. "If you go, you'll need help." She had someone with her, a young man who ran the children's clinic in town. He disappeared the same night she did. "Maybe start there." Keanu nodded, thanked her, and stepped out into the fog. The mountains loomed large, the sky turning silver. As he walked toward the Jeep, he noticed something odd. Fresh tire tracks in the mud. Someone else had been there recently. He climbed into the Jeep, started the engine, and followed the tracks down the narrow road that led to the town below. They twisted through forest and mist until they stopped near a small river crossing. There, the tracks vanished. But something else caught his eye. A torn piece of fabric caught on a branch, dark red with embroidered initials. Speed his breath caught. Sandra's initials. He knelt, turning the cloth in his hands, the cold wind whipping his hair. She had been here. As he stood, he noticed movement across the river. A man watching him from the trees. Tall, wearing a dark coat. Their eyes met for a split second before the stranger turned and disappeared into the forest. Keanu didn't chase him. Not yet. He knew a trap when he saw one. Instead, he pulled out his phone and took a photo of the fabric, then tucked it safely away. He would need proof. By nightfall, he reached the nearest town, a small place called Bimtal. He found an old guest house, ordered nothing but tea, and sat by the window as rain began to fall again. He opened the flash drive on his laptop. Inside were encrypted files, labeled with foundation names and bank codes. One file, however, was playable, a short video clip. He clicked it. The screen showed Sandra again, in a different room this time, whispering into the camera. Her face looked pale, frightened. "If you found this," she said, "then I'm running out of time. Valen isn't who he says he is. He's connected to something far bigger. And they know I have proof. Keanu, don't trust anyone from the Foundation. They'll find you too. The truth is hidden in the children's files, under the name Project Dawn. Please. If you ever cared for me, finish what I started." The clip ended abruptly, replaced by static. Keanu sat back, the tea untouched, his heart pounding. "Project Dawn." A knock came at the door. 3 slow taps. He closed the laptop, stood up quietly, and moved closer. "Who is it?" he asked. Silence. Then a voice, calm, deep, and unfamiliar. "Mr. Reeves, we need to talk." Keanu froze. He hadn't told anyone his real name. He reached for the handle but didn't open it. "Who are you?" The voice on the other side paused. "Someone who doesn't want you to die like she did." The door creaked slightly as a folded paper slipped through the gap and landed on the floor. Keanu waited, listening to footsteps fade away before picking it up. The note read, "She's alive. Trust no one. Meet me at dawn by the old bridge." His pulse quickened. The handwriting was rushed, but something about it felt familiar, almost like hers. Outside, thunder cracked over the hills, lightning illuminating the wet road. For a long moment, Keanu stood motionless, the note trembling slightly in his hand. If this was real, everything he believed about Sandra's disappearance was about to change. If it was a trap, it might be his last sunrise. Either way, he was going. He folded the note, slipped it into his pocket, and looked out at the dark horizon. The rain had stopped, but the storm was only beginning. The bridge at dawn, the first light of morning, crept over the misty hills, painting the world in silver and blue. The town of Bimtal still slept, its narrow streets wet from the night rain. Keanu Reeves walked quietly toward the old bridge at the edge of the forest, his jacket zipped high against the cold. Each step felt heavier than the last. He had replayed the message over and over in his mind. "She's alive. Trust no one." The handwriting, the tone, even the smell of the paper had haunted him all night. Part of him wanted to believe it. Part of him feared it was bait. As he reached the bridge, the fog thickened, blurring the trees into ghostly silhouettes. The river below roared softly, carrying fallen leaves downstream. He stood in the center, waiting. Then a shadow appeared through the mist. A man, tall and thin, wearing a dark raincoat. His steps were cautious but deliberate. "You came alone," the stranger said, stopping a few feet away. "That was the deal," Keanu replied, his eyes steady. "Who are you?" The man pulled back his hood. His face was rough, unshaven, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. "My name's Dev," he said. "I worked with her, Sandra." Keanu's heart kicked once, hard. "She's alive?" Dev hesitated, then nodded slowly. She was. A year ago. Keanu stepped closer. Where is she now? I don't know, Dev said quietly. But I know why she vanished. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded map, handing it to Keanu. She found something no one was supposed to see. Project Dawn wasn't about helping children. It was about using them. Keanu frowned. Using them how? They were testing a cognitive implant, Dev explained, his voice low. Something designed to enhance intelligence in young minds, using neural prototypes developed from brain scans. The Foundation was selling this data to a private defense contractor. When Sandra found out, she took the original files. She told me she'd send them to a journalist in New York, but she never made it out. Keanu stared at the map. It showed 3 marked locations: the orphanage, the Bimtal Clinic, and a third place deep in the forest labeled only as Sector 9. What's this? Keanu asked. Dev looked around nervously. The research facility. That's where they kept the children who showed promise. It's been shut down for years, but I've seen people go there at night. No one comes back. Then that's where I'm going, Keanu said. You can't just walk in, Dev warned. They have watchers everywhere. Drones, guards, local police. Even the Foundation's board doesn't know what happens inside. Keanu folded the map and pocketed it. I've walked into worse. Dev studied him for a moment. She said you'd say that. Keanu froze. She said that? Dev nodded. Before she disappeared, she told me, if anyone can finish this, it's him. He doesn't give up. The words struck deep. For a second, the fog seemed to hold its breath. But before Keanu could reply, a faint hum broke the silence. Mechanical, sharp, growing louder. Dev's eyes widened. They found us. A black drone emerged from the mist, red light blinking under its belly. Keanu grabbed Dev's arm and pulled him down behind the stone railing as bullets ripped through the fog, shattering the wooden planks of the bridge. Run! Dev shouted. They sprinted toward the forest's edge as the drone fired again, splinters flying past their heads. Keanu ducked behind a tree, grabbed a fallen branch, and hurled it with all his strength. It hit the drone's rotor, spinning it sideways into the river. The explosion echoed across the valley, scattering birds into the sky. When the smoke cleared, Keanu turned, but Dev was gone. Dev, he shouted. No answer, only the whisper of wind and the rush of the river below. Then, on the ground near the bridge, he found a small metal device, half-burned, blinking faintly. He picked it up and pressed the single button on its surface. A projection flickered to life, casting a dim light against the fog. Sandra's voice filled the air. If you're seeing this, it means you found Dev. And if he's gone, then you're close. Keanu, listen carefully. Project Dawn has a secondary site, one not listed in any file. They call it the Cradle. It's hidden beneath the old Bimtal Hospital. That's where the children are. That's where they're keeping everything. Her voice trembled slightly. You'll find a man named Dr. Sahil there. He's the key. And Keanu. Don't let them turn this into another weapon. Promise me that. The projection faded, leaving Keanu standing alone on the fog-drenched bridge. He exhaled slowly, staring at the horizon where sunlight struggled through the clouds. Everything inside him hurt. The loss, the guilt. The realization that she had been fighting something so much bigger than either of them. He turned and began walking toward the town again, determination hardening with every step. At the bottom of the hill, an old man sweeping the road looked up and said quietly, You're the American looking for her, aren't you? Keanu stopped. You know about Sandra? The old man nodded slowly. They took her through the hospital. She was crying but not afraid, like she knew something we didn't. Keanu's voice softened. When was this? 2 nights before the fire, the man said. The hospital burned down, but no one ever found her body. Fire. Cover-up. Keanu thanked him and continued toward town. The pieces forming a pattern. One that pointed straight to the ruins of the old hospital. By the time night fell again, he stood before the blackened remains of the building. Vines crawled up the broken walls and the smell of damp earth filled the air. He pushed open the rusted gate and walked inside. The moonlight fell through shattered windows, illuminating collapsed corridors and burned furniture. And then, faintly, from somewhere deep below, came the sound of metal scraping against metal, like a door being forced open. Someone was down there. He followed the noise down a stairwell that seemed untouched by fire. The air grew colder, heavier. The stairs ended at a steel door half covered in soot. A keypad beside it blinked with faint light. He tried pressing a few buttons, but the keypad locked with a dull beep. Then he noticed something scratched into the metal surface. Initials again. Spe below them, faint words carved with a sharp object. Not the end. His pulse quickened. She had been here. Keanu knelt, ran his fingers over the letters, and whispered, "I'm here now." Suddenly, the keypad beeped twice. The door clicked open. He stepped inside. The corridor beyond was dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights. On the walls were charts, photos of children, and diagrams labeled Phase 3, cognitive trials. And at the end of the hallway, he saw movement, a figure in a lab coat. Standing still watching him, "Dr. Sahil," Keanu called. The figure turned slowly, but it wasn't Sahil. It was Dev. Alive, eyes wide, face pale. "They're here," Dev whispered. "Run!" And before Keanu could speak, the lights went out, plunging everything into darkness. A mechanical whir echoed through the corridor, low, deliberate, and close. Keanu froze. Somewhere behind him, something metallic moved, breathing, and from the shadows came a voice, calm, cold, and unmistakably American. "You should have stayed in Hollywood, Mr. Reeves." The cradle beneath, the darkness was complete, thick as smoke, alive with whispers of machines. Keanu Reeves stood perfectly still, listening. Somewhere beyond the corridor, faint footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, confident. The voice came again, closer now. "You've always had a habit of walking into stories you don't understand." Keanu said nothing. His eyes adjusted slowly to the low red glow of an emergency light flickering down the hall. Dev was gone, vanished into the black. Only his dropped flashlight remained, rolling slightly across the floor. Keanu picked it up, its weak beam cutting through dust and shadow. The walls around him were lined with glass chambers, small, coffin-like pods filled with wires and faded labels. Inside some of them he could see old equipment, empty vials, even children's toys. His stomach tightened. This was where it had happened. A faint metallic click behind him made him turn sharply. The beam of his flashlight caught the outline of a man stepping from the shadows. Tailored suit, silver hair slicked back, face sharp as glass. "Mr. Valen." "You were always her weakness," Valen said calmly, hands clasped behind his back. "I warned her that emotions would ruin everything." Keanu's voice was low. "Where is she?" Valen smiled faintly. "You still think this is about her?" Keanu took a slow step forward. "I'm not leaving without an answer." Valen sighed, almost like a teacher disappointed in a student. She wanted to save the children, but she didn't understand the science. "Project Dawn wasn't evil, Mr. Reeves. It was evolution. We were designing the next generation of human intelligence." "You used orphans," Keanu said sharply. "You experimented on them." Valen tilted his head. "We gave them purpose. We turned loss into potential." The flashlight trembled slightly in Keanu's hand. "You killed her, didn't you?" Valen's smile didn't fade. "Death is such an outdated word." "She's not dead. Not exactly." Before Keanu could respond, Valen pressed a small remote in his hand. A door slid open behind him with a hiss, revealing a glass chamber lit in soft blue light. Inside lay a woman, motionless, pale, connected to thin wires running into her temples. Her face, though faintly bruised, was unmistakable. Sandra Bullock. Keanu's heart stopped. He moved forward, breath quickening. "What have you done to her?" Valen's voice softened almost tenderly. She volunteered, though she didn't know the full extent. Her neural patterns were compatible with the prototype. She became the perfect vessel for our cognitive interface. She's the key to completing Project Dawn. Keanu's fists clenched. "You turned her into an experiment." Valen's tone didn't waver. "She wanted to expose us. I simply gave her what she wanted. Knowledge. Unlimited understanding. Look at her, Mr. Reeves. She's more alive than you can imagine. Keanu ignored him and moved toward the chamber. The door was sealed with biometric locks. He pressed his hands to the glass, his reflection trembling over her still face. "Sandra," he whispered. "It's me. It's Keanu. Wake up." For a moment, nothing. Then, a faint flicker beneath her eyelids. Her fingers twitched. Valen stepped closer. "You see? Her consciousness is still active. She's listening." Keanu turned sharply. "Let her go." Valen smiled again. "You don't understand. She doesn't want to leave." Keanu's patience broke. He grabbed Valen by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "You don't get to decide what she wants." Valen didn't fight back. He simply stared, eyes cold. "You're too late. We already transferred part of her data into the network. If you destroy this place, she dies completely." Keanu released him and looked back at the chamber. Sandra's face was peaceful now, almost serene, as if suspended between dreams and death. He searched the control panels nearby, his hands moving quickly, scanning symbols, trying to find a release command. Lines of code flashed across the monitor, written in unfamiliar script. Neural sequence data, encryption keys, medical readings. Behind him, Valen straightened his jacket. "Even if you wake her, she won't remember you." The process wiped her memories clean. "What remains is fragments." Keanu paused, his voice breaking slightly. "Fragments are enough." He turned, noticing a red cable running from the chamber into a main server hub. The label read Core Link, Consciousness Transfer Channel. Without hesitation, he reached for the emergency lever beside it. Valen's expression changed instantly. "If you pull that, you'll erase her." Keanu's eyes were wet now, but his voice was steady. "You've already erased enough." He yanked the lever. Alarms erupted through the room, red lights flashing wildly. The chamber began to hum, electricity sparking along the wires. Valen shouted over the noise, "You fool! You'll kill her!" Keanu pressed his hand to the glass again. "Come back to me, Sandra, please." For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Then her chest rose sharply, like someone gasping for air after drowning. Her eyes opened, unfocused, terrified, human. Valen staggered backward, disbelief on his face. "That's impossible." Keanu hit the override switch and the chamber door hissed open. The wires detached one by one, releasing her. She fell forward into his arms, weak but breathing. "You're safe," he whispered, holding her close. "You're safe now?" Her voice was barely audible. "Keanu, they took the children." "I know," he said. "We'll find them, together." But Valen wasn't done. He reached for a small pistol holstered beneath his jacket. The sound of the hammer clicking froze the air. "You won't leave this place alive," Valen said, his voice trembling with rage. "She's not yours to save." Keanu slowly shifted his body to shield her, his expression calm but deadly. "Then shoot me." Valen's hand shook. For the first time, he looked uncertain. And then, a shot rang out. Valen's body jerked. His gun clattered to the floor. Behind him stood Dev, bleeding from a wound on his shoulder but holding a smoking revolver. "You talk too much," Dev muttered. Keanu caught Valen's body as it fell. Eyes still open, the arrogance gone from them. The alarms continued blaring. Smoke began to rise from the servers. The whole facility trembled as automated shutdowns activated. "We have to move," Dev said, staggering. Keanu lifted Sandra gently, her head resting against his chest. She was barely conscious, but alive. "There's another exit?" Dev nodded weakly. "Through the lower tunnel." "Hurry." They moved fast, weaving through flickering hallways as the building groaned around them. Sparks burst from broken lights. Pipes hissed steam. Somewhere above, explosions rumbled. Self-destruct protocols. As they reached the tunnel entrance, Sandra stirred slightly in Keanu's arms. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a fleeting moment she smiled. "You came," she whispered. Keanu's throat tightened. "I never stopped." But before they could take another step, the tunnel door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous clang, locking tight. Dev slammed his hands against it. "It's sealed from the control room." Keanu looked around desperately. The tunnel was lined with old service conduits, narrow, unstable, half-collapsed. He spotted one large enough to crawl through. "This way," Dev nodded, pain etched in his face. "Go first. I'll hold them off if they follow." "I'm not leaving you," Keanu said. Dev smiled faintly. "Someone has to make sure she gets out. Besides, you still owe her a happy ending." He handed Keanu the revolver. "In case you need it?" Keanu hesitated, then took it, eyes burning. "Thank you." Dev turned back toward the collapsing hallway. "Go." Keanu climbed into the narrow conduit, carrying Sandra, crawling through darkness as the roar of destruction echoed behind them. The heat grew stronger, the tunnel shaking violently. When he finally emerged into open air, the night sky above was alive with smoke and flame. The entire facility below was collapsing into itself. He laid Sandra down gently on the grass, her breathing shallow but steady. From the flames behind, he heard Dev's voice, distant, almost lost in the chaos. "Finish it, Keanu." And then the fire swallowed everything. Keanu turned away, tears mingling with ash and rain as the building imploded in a burst of light. He looked down at Sandra. She was trembling, eyes half open, her voice a whisper. "The files. They're not gone. Someone else has them." "Who?" Keanu asked softly. Her lips barely moved. "The Foundation." The board. New York. He understood then. Valen had been just one piece of a much larger machine. As dawn broke over the mountains, Keanu held her hand and whispered, "Then we finish this together." And for the first time in years, she smiled. Faint, fragile, but real. The ghosts of New York. The flight to New York was long, silent, and heavy with things unsaid. Sandra Bullock sat beside Keanu Reeves, her face pale but alive, her eyes sometimes lost in the clouds outside the window. She remembered pieces, flashes of the orphanage, the lab, the humming sound before darkness. But everything else was a blur, as if someone had carefully rewritten her memories with blank spaces. Keanu kept watch the whole flight, not closing his eyes once. In his hand, he held the small flash drive he had taken from Valen's jacket before the fire consumed the facility. It was half melted, its surface scarred, but inside it might still hold what Sandra risked everything for, the proof that could destroy the Foundation. As the plane descended over the city, dawn turned the skyline gold. New York looked calm from above, but Keanu knew the storm waiting beneath. They landed quietly, no press, no questions. Keanu used a different name at immigration, just like in India. He guided Sandra through the crowd and into a waiting cab. The driver asked for a destination, and Keanu answered simply, "Brooklyn Heights." They drove in silence. Sandra kept glancing at him as if seeing him for the first time in years. "You look different," she said softly. "Older?" he asked. "Wiser," she smiled faintly. "And sadder." He looked out the window. "Grief does that." When they reached the small brownstone safe house, one Keanu had used years ago during filming, the streets were still wet from last night's rain. He unlocked the door and led her inside. The place was quiet, full of dust and the faint scent of old books. "You've been here before," Sandra murmured. He nodded. "When I needed to disappear." She looked around slowly, her eyes lingering on a framed photo by the piano, the two of them on the speed set, smiling, covered in dust. She touched the frame gently. "We had no idea what life would become." "We never do," Keanu said quietly. He set up his laptop on the wooden desk, inserted the damaged flash drive, and waited. The screen flickered, the drive whining softly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single file appeared, Project on Phase 0. He opened it. Dozens of encrypted folders filled the screen, along with coordinates, donor names, and coded transaction trails. One document stood out, Board Memo Relocation Plan. As he clicked it, the words appeared slowly, parts of it corrupted but readable enough. Project Dawn Relocation Initiated. New Hub, Manhattan Research Alliance. Overseen by Board Chairperson Elizabeth Morgan. All data secured through internal proxy, Eclipse. Subject B transfer incomplete, locate before phase restart. Keanu leaned back. "They moved it here." "The entire operation," Sandra frowned. "Elizabeth Morgan, she runs the Global Foundation now. I met her once at a charity gala. She spoke about education for underprivileged children. She seemed kind." Keanu gave a grim smile. "So did Valen." He closed the laptop, his decision already made. "We find her, we end this." Sandra looked down at her hands. Keanu, what if the world doesn't believe us? They'll say we're making it up, that I'm unstable. He met her eyes. Then we show them proof so strong they can't deny it. For a while, neither spoke. The rain outside had stopped, but thunder still grumbled in the distance, rolling over the skyline like an omen. By evening, they were standing in front of the towering glass headquarters of the Manhattan Research Alliance. Security was tight: armed guards, metal detectors, and a biometric entrance system. But Keanu had spent half his life on film sets filled with secrets and illusions. He knew how to move quietly, how to blend in. They waited until the last shift change before slipping in through the service entrance. Sandra, wearing a nurse's uniform borrowed from a nearby clinic, pushed a cart with old files. Keanu followed, dressed as maintenance staff. They passed through corridors humming with fluorescent light until they reached the top floor. Behind a frosted glass door, a nameplate read Elizabeth Morgan, Executive Office. Keanu motioned for Sandra to wait, then picked the lock silently. The door opened with a soft click. Inside, the office was vast, minimalist furniture, a wall of city lights, and on the desk, a single silver tablet glowing faintly. Keanu picked it up, scrolling through folders labeled Dawn Archive, Neural Mapping, and Phase Continuation. His chest tightened. They hadn't stopped. They were rebuilding everything. Sandra's voice broke the silence. She's funding it through charity grants. This whole building is a mask. Keanu turned toward her. We take this to the press. But before he could finish, the lights dimmed. The door locked automatically. A voice echoed through hidden speakers, calm, precise, and unmistakably familiar. Mr. Reeves, Ms. Bullock, you've come far. Keanu froze. Elizabeth, you could have lived quietly, she continued. Instead, you broke into my facility, stole my data, and destroyed years of work. Sandra's voice trembled. You're experimenting on children. You call that work? Elizabeth's laugh was soft, almost pitying. You think too small. Project Dawn was never about the children. It was about humanity's next step. The orphans were only the beginning. We're creating something better, something eternal. Keanu clenched his fists. You mean control? I mean order, she said simply. The screens on the wall flickered to life, showing rows of new children's faces, each linked to glowing neural signatures. Sandra stepped forward. You can't do this. It's already done, Elizabeth replied, but I'll offer you a choice. Walk away now or watch him die again. Keanu's heart pounded. What do you mean, again? From the screen behind Elizabeth's voice came an footage from the Indian facility, seconds before the explosion. It showed Dev dragging an injured guard toward the server room, placing something in a containment pod. He survived, Elizabeth said softly, and he works for me now. Keanu felt the air leave his lungs. Dev's voice came through the speaker next, colder, emotionless. You shouldn't have come back, Keanu. Sandra stepped closer to the screen. Dev, she's controlling you. No, he said. She showed me the truth. Dawn isn't evil, it's the future. She saved me. Keanu shook his head slowly. She used you just like she used them. Then stop me, Dev said flatly. The screen went black. Within seconds, the lights in the office flickered red. Alarms began to blare. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed in the corridor. Keanu grabbed the tablet, shoved it into his bag, and pulled Sandra toward the emergency exit. Guards flooded the hallway. He pushed her behind a pillar, then disarmed the first guard who rounded the corner, moving with quiet precision. Two more came. He took them down before they could raise their weapons. They sprinted down the stairwell as fire alarms roared through the building. Sandra's hand clung to his sleeve. They'll catch us. Not if we get to the garage, he said. They burst into the underground level where cars lined up in rows of polished steel. Keanu hot-wired one quickly, a black sedan, and sped out through the side ramp as sirens wailed behind them. The city blurred past in streaks of light and rain. Sandra pressed her hand against the dashboard, trying to steady her breathing. Where do we go now? We expose them, Keanu said. We send this to every news outlet, every reporter who isn't bought. And if they silence us first, she whispered. He looked at her, his eyes steady. Then we make sure the world hears before they can. They drove across the Brooklyn Bridge as dawn approached again, the skyline glowing faintly beneath clouds. Sandra leaned her head back, exhaustion finally winning over fear. You never stopped believing, did you? She said softly. Keanu glanced at her, a small smile touching his lips. I stopped believing in fame a long time ago, but not in people. She looked at him with quiet warmth. You could have stayed away, lived your life in peace. He shook his head. Peace without purpose isn't living. But just as he finished, the car's dashboard flickered. A red symbol appeared on the navigation screen, a circle with a single word beneath it, Eclipse. Sandra's eyes widened. They're tracking us? The car engine suddenly cut out. The lights inside went dark. Keanu slammed the brakes, bringing the car to a halt on the bridge. In the rearview mirror, several black vans appeared, speeding toward them with blinding headlights. Keanu reached for the revolver Dev had given him in India. He looked at Sandra, his voice calm but urgent. "Run when I say." "I'm not leaving you," she said firmly. He looked at her, eyes soft but unyielding. "You have to. If they get you, everything we did dies with you." The vans screeched to a stop, men in tactical armor pouring out. One of them stepped forward, a familiar silhouette illuminated by the flashing bridge lights. Dev. His face was colder now, eyes hollow, voice steady. "This ends tonight." Keanu stepped out of the car slowly, the revolver in hand, the wind whipping his jacket. Behind him, the city lights flickered like dying stars. "You're right," Keanu said quietly. "It ends tonight, but not the way you think." The rain began to fall again, slow and heavy, blurring the lines between friend and enemy, past and present, love and duty. As lightning cracked across the sky, Keanu took one step forward, and the bridge became a battlefield between destiny and redemption. One last light, the rain poured hard over the Brooklyn Bridge, the wind slicing through the night like a whisper of war. The city beyond glowed faintly beneath the storm, skyscrapers half hidden in fog. Keanu Reeves stood in the center of the bridge, soaked, unflinching, facing the line of black vans and the armed men that had come for him. Behind him, Sandra Bullock's voice broke through the storm. "Keanu, don't do this alone." He turned his head slightly, eyes soft. "You have to survive this, Sandra. If they take you, the truth dies." She shook her head, stepping closer, her soaked hair clinging to her face. "We've been running from destiny for 20 years, not tonight." The men fanned out, weapons raised. At their center, Dev stepped forward, his face half lit by the flashing red bridge lights. The man who once saved Keanu now looked like someone hollowed out by control. "Put the gun down," Dev said coldly. "You're surrounded." Keanu didn't move. "You don't have to do this." "You think you can change the world with kindness?" Dev asked, his voice trembling beneath his anger. "That's what she thought. It got her locked in a machine." Keanu's tone was steady. "And it got you trapped in one?" Dev's jaw tightened. "She betrayed everything." "No," Keanu said softly. "She reminded us what it means to be human." Dev hesitated for the smallest moment. Behind him, the van doors opened, and Elizabeth Morgan stepped out, wrapped in a black coat, untouched by the rain. She walked forward calmly, as if watching a scene she had written long ago. "Touching," she said, "but pointless. The world doesn't need martyrs anymore. It needs direction. Project Dawn will give it that." Sandra's voice rose through the storm. "You're using children. You're turning their pain into profit." Elizabeth's eyes turned toward her. "And you? You turned your fame into silence. How many times did you look away before deciding to care?" The words hit hard, but Sandra didn't flinch. She stepped beside Keanu, her voice low but unbreakable. "I'm not looking away now." Keanu raised the small tablet he had taken from Elizabeth's office. "This holds everything. Your experiments, your transactions, your lies. We already sent a copy to every major network." For the first time, Elizabeth's expression faltered. "You're bluffing." "Try me," Keanu said. A faint tremor of movement passed through the men around her. The rain hit harder, thunder growling deep in the clouds. Dev looked between them, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What did you do?" Keanu's voice was calm, almost tender. "We told the truth, the one thing your machines can't process." "You'll be killed for this," Elizabeth hissed. "Maybe," Keanu said. "But at least we'll die free." The first shot came from one of the guards, wild, desperate. Keanu ducked, pulling Sandra behind the car. The bridge erupted in chaos. Gunfire flashed, echoing against steel beams. Sparks rained down as bullets struck the railings. Keanu fired back not to kill but to clear a path. Dev advanced through the gunfire, unshaken, his expression almost mechanical. He raised his weapon, aimed straight at Sandra. Keanu stepped in front of her without hesitation. The shot hit him in the shoulder, spinning him slightly but not breaking him. He fell to one knee, clutching the wound, his breath sharp. "Keanu!" Sandra screamed, grabbing him. Dev lowered his weapon, something human flickering in his eyes for the first time. "Why would you do that?" Keanu looked up, blood mixing with rain. "Because that's what love does, it protects, even when it hurts." Dev froze, his hand shaking. The control Elizabeth had over him began to crack. She shouted from behind him, "Finish it, Dev!" But Dev didn't move. Keanu's voice softened. "She's using you. She used all of us. Remember India. Remember the children." Dev's eyes darted back to Elizabeth. Her calm was gone now, replaced by anger. "You owe me your life," she snapped. He turned toward her slowly. You don't get to own life. And then he did the one thing Elizabeth never expected. He turned the gun on her. For a second, no one breathed. She whispered, "Dev, think about what you're doing." "I am," he said quietly. For the first time, he pulled the trigger. The echo rolled across the bridge, swallowed by thunder. Elizabeth fell back, her black coat spreading like a shadow beneath the rain. The remaining guards lowered their weapons, uncertain, lost without command. Dev dropped his gun and fell to his knees, shaking. Keanu stood slowly, pain burning through his body but his eyes alive. "It's over," he said quietly. Dev looked up at him, tears mixing with rain. "I'm sorry." Keanu knelt beside him. "You found your way back, that's all that matters." Dev nodded weakly. "You should go, the authorities will come." Keanu helped Sandra to her feet, his arm around her shoulder. Sirens echoed in the distance now, police, press, the world catching up to the truth. As they walked toward the end of the bridge, Sandra looked back once. Dev was still kneeling, the rain washing everything clean, the blood, the lies, the past. By the time the sun broke through the clouds, the bridge was surrounded by flashing lights. News cameras pointed at the wreckage, reporters shouting questions, drones circling. Keanu and Sandra didn't speak. They walked past the chaos, hands still joined, two silhouettes against the rising sun. Later that day, footage of the confrontation leaked worldwide. Project Dawn became the most searched phrase on the internet. Investigations began. Elizabeth's empire collapsed. The children rescued from the network were placed in real homes, their names finally known. Weeks passed. Keanu's shoulder healed slowly, but some scars stayed deeper. He and Sandra moved quietly between interviews and courtrooms, giving statements, telling their story. And then one morning, in a quiet park far from cameras, Keanu sat alone on a bench, watching children play under the soft spring light. He felt the familiar ache of loss and the quiet peace of survival. Sandra walked up beside him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and smiled. "We finally did it," he nodded. "You did it. I just followed your letter." She sat down next to him. "Funny thing about that letter," she said. "I never posted it. I left it on my desk the day I disappeared. Someone must have found it years later." Keanu looked at her, eyes soft. "Maybe it was meant to find me when I was ready." The air was warm now, the storm long gone. Sandra leaned back, her voice gentle. "What do we do now?" Keanu smiled faintly. "We live, quietly, honestly, together. No more missions, just life." She nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "Maybe that's the hardest mission of all." He chuckled softly, eyes glinting with warmth. "Then we'll make it our best one." The camera of life faded back, the two of them sitting under the soft sunlight, surrounded by laughter, peace, and the echoes of what they fought for. No headlines, no fame, just 2 souls who had carried the weight of the world and still chose kindness. As the wind moved through the trees, Sandra whispered, "One last mission." Keanu smiled. "One last love." The screen faded to quiet light.